So think about it this way. Every second, life gives us a chance to show who we are. It's what we do in those moments, what choices we make, what decisions that we make that make us.
Welcome, everybody, to the Scott Ross Show. My name is Scott Ross, and I'm so honored that you've taken time out of your week to take a listen to this podcast. I am very, very excited about the interview we have for you today. It is with Lolly Daskal. She is the founder and CEO of Lead From Within, and you are going to get so much out of this interview. Lolly has so many accolades, it's hard to list them all. Among her many awards, she's named one of the top 50 leadership and management experts by Inc. magazine. She was named the most inspiring woman in the world by the Huffington Post in 2017. She's written for HBR, for Inc.com, Fast Company, Huffington Post, Psychology Today, and tons others. She's got lots of best-selling books. Her latest bestseller is The Leadership Gap that she's going to talk about during this podcast. But you're going to get so much out of this in terms of taking your own leadership to another level, learning how to coach others during any sort of leadership environment, and how to identify and take advantage of opportunities during a crisis, which is absolutely pertinent to what's going on in the world right now. So you're going to love this interview. I can't wait for you to meet Lolly. So let's jump right in. So Lolly, thank you so much for being on the Scott Ross Show. I'm very honored to speak with you. And you have so much that you have contributed to the world in terms of thought leadership and insight on leadership and just other insights as well. So trying to figure out how we make the best use of this time is a little bit challenging. But just for the people who aren't as familiar with your work, maybe haven't seen your TED Talk yet, give them just an overview of kind of your background and what your come from is when it comes to this whole leadership conversation.
Absolutely. So I have been in my business for over 3 decades, and I have been through many challenges and crises of what we've been through since the early 80s. And the thing about me is back then, I had a very unique message. And the message is, every single person that I encounter is a leader, and that you find leadership from within. That's why my company is called Lead From Within. And I also believe that leadership is a humanity thing. It's not about how smart you are. It's about who you are as a person. Way back when I started, it wasn't a message that was embraced. But I still stuck to my guns. That's what I believe, because I've gotten my information from philosophy and psychology. It's based on science. It's based on real life experience. The leaders that we admire most are the leaders that lead from within. So after almost 3 decades, I still believe by my message, and I stand by it.
I love it. And I'm just curious, because of your, breadth of experience and the fact that it has been over 3 decades, I think clearly if we look back in the 70s and 80s, that idea of the archetype leader was very, very prominent. And what I'm curious about is, have you seen a maturity in the world's view of leadership over the time that you've been working? Or do you think we're still stuck in the past as far as how we view leaders as those kind of archetypal characters?
So I think about it this way. Overall, we're a little stuck. Individually, we have made some really beautiful progress. So think about it this way, because people think as leaders as the person in power. I don't believe that's what leadership is about. So if you're still going with the old leadership, leader in power, yes, we're stuck. But think about the individuals that make you feel a certain way. I believe that we've moved the needle on that.
Terrific. So let's talk about some of your kind of pillars of leadership and help our readers kind of touch on each of those. You have quite a few. I think there's 4 pillars, if I'm not mistaken, of your leadership philosophy. And one is what we've just been talking about, which is this false concept of the leader. This idea of the person who's bigger than life, the type A personality, the person who's in charge. Where do we get leadership wrong when we think about leaders in that way?
So basically, as I just said earlier, when we think of leadership, our first inclination is to think the leader in power, the leader in a position, the leader in with the title. And I truly believe that true leadership comes not from power, but from those who empower others. So it could be your coach, it could be your spouse, it could be your partner, it could be your teacher, it could be someone that you've just met. If they make you feel better about who you are, that's a leader. And so I think that's a foundational element of leadership that we get wrong, that we think that, it has to be, you have to arrive at leadership. No, you become a leader. You don't arrive at it through a position or title.
Amazing. I love it. So my mentor is John Maxwell, and he has this whole law of the lid idea. And so when we teach leadership, we talk about that law a lot. And one of the things that I get back is a lot of insecurity. People know they need to raise their leadership lid, but they feel like, well, I'm not an extrovert. I wasn't the captain of the football team or the captain of the cheerleading squad. Like, what do I have to bring to the table? How do you approach those people who have those insecurities and kind of coach them through that iterative stepping stone process to become the leader that they want to be?
Thank you for asking that question, because that's a very important question. And that's not only for leaders, but it's for individuals, entrepreneurs. It's just a life lesson. In my research, when I did my book, The Leadership Gap, what comes between you and your greatness, the research shows that 99% of us suffer from the imposter syndrome. We suffer from thinking we're not good enough, we're not capable enough, we're not smart enough. So we're in good company, right? Because it's all of us. I happen to coach the 1% leader. I don't want to name him because we all know him very well. And the thing is, he has no self-doubt whatsoever. What he knows is the best and is the smartest, but let's not talk about him now. Let's talk about how everybody else feels. The person that feels they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they have this self-doubt. I talk about in my book, The Leadership Gap, that each one of us has it. But if we stay there, if we stay in our gap of self-doubt, then we don't leverage it, we won't get the success and what I call the greatness that lives within us. The way to tackle that, or the technique or the tool, is, I believe, find out what's great about you. Find out your strengths. Take those things and really excel. Once you excel at that, have this mindset of learning mindset. Learn more, grow more, develop more, expand more. When you do that, think about it this way. The greatness goes up on the scale and the gap comes down. Think about if you've been in your business. The more you know, the better you are, the more confident you are. So if you're feeling self-doubt, become a student of your business, become a student of your leadership, become a student of life. Be curious enough, learn, so the self-doubt goes down and the confidence comes up.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you, there's a little bit of a debate, I guess, amongst leadership thinkers around where you should focus your attention. And, like Maxwell's very clear, he believes that we should focus almost everything on our strengths, because then we could be at 10 versus, focusing on the things we're not good at, where at best we might rise to a 5 or a 6. What is your approach to our strengths and our weaknesses, and where our personal development attention should flow?
Right. So this comes from my own work and my own research. So this is what I have found. And that's why The Leadership Gap, my book, is very important, is that we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. I'm a big believer that we have to leverage our skills and our strengths. But if we don't know our weaknesses, I believe they end up owning us. So you have to be aware of your weaknesses and do something about them, not just leave them doormat. Because think about it this way: if your life is a balloon, right, and you only squeeze on one side, the other side of the balloon blows up. So it's kind of, I'm a big holistic kind of coach, that we have to know our strengths and we also have to know our weaknesses all at the same time, and we have to acknowledge both in order to really reach who we want to be. And so, yes, learn, grow, develop on your skills, but also know your weaknesses, what to do about them, how to leverage them, how to manage them, and how to lead with them.
I think that social media has created more insecurity than maybe in any generation in the past. I deal a lot with youth and millennials, and the level of anxiety in that generation is off the charts. And it's because we used to have advertising that told us all the ways we weren't good enough. We weren't skinny enough. We didn't drive a cool enough car. But now it's in your face every single day that your life isn't as cool as all these other people on social media. So, what are some exercises someone can go through to identify that they do have strengths, they do have something to contribute?
So the biggest problem that we have right now in our society is, and it comes from the imposter syndrome. And the science of the imposter syndrome, we're so busy comparing ourselves to others, we don't get to learn about ourselves. And this whole idea of learning about ourselves, takes work. And most people don't want to spend the time doing that work because they want to be fed. Tell me who I am. Tell me what I should do. Think about leadership. Most of the leadership books, as you can tell, I read a book every day. I read, right? I like to read. I'd like to know what people are saying. And most of the leadership books that are out there, they'll give you all the how-tos, how, what, when, and where, and even why. For a long time, why was a big thing. But we're missing the most important aspect, and the aspect of who. If you don't spend the time figuring out the who, how are you supposed to do the how, the what, the when, and even understand your why? So
Mm.
for the youth and for the millennials, spend that time of going inward to lead from within. Find out who you are, not what your neighbor is or what someone else is. Find out about yourself. What do you like? What don't you like? What is important to you? What do you value? Why do you value it? And from there, that is the foundational elements of learning about yourself.
So you coach very high performers. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, if you were to coach my audience right now, a lot of us are a little bit frustrated in this current situation, right? We're out of fuel, we're out of gas, and we're wondering what's the point, maybe. So how do you create that kind of internal engine that can refuel when you need it, and keep you moving when you face obstacles, especially like the kinds of things that are completely outside of our control right now?
Great question. And it follows something that we just talked about. See, most people that are used to doing the how of what somebody else tells you, you run out of fuel. When you have a good foundational element of who you are, then you know how to nourish yourself. So for today's climate, the thing that I would say is find out what inspires you. Find out what motivates you. Find out, and for people, it's different things. Maybe, for me, it's reading a book. For me, and what I've been reading a lot since I've been quarantined is more biographies, because people have been through tough times. How did they make it through? Usually all of us hear the end part, the Nobel Prize, or we hear about the award that they got. But what was happening until they got that award? What was happening until they got that Nobel Prize? That to me is more interesting, because their journey is where I'm going to get motivated and inspired myself. Is that when we think we have no control, I think it's most important to go inward, find out who we are, and yet do the things that will motivate us to get us out of our little bubble of thinking we have no control.
I love it. I love biographies. I'm a big, big fan and big proponent. I mean, we can learn from our own mistakes, or we can learn from someone else's, and it's way faster to go learn them from someone else's. So I really, really appreciate that. So once somebody decides, okay, I'm going to look inwardly, I'm going to find out who I really am, I'm going to figure out what I have to contribute, and I'm going to buy into that. Now what? Like, where do they go as sort of the first steps in their leadership journey?
So the thing about it is that people think that there's a journey and a destination. Like, I've arrived. Okay, I've done the work. I found out what's important. No. Then guess what life does? Life, your business, your leadership, your success, they're going to throw you challenges. They're going to throw you curveballs. It's what you do in your moments. That's where you leave your footprints. So think about it this way. Every second, life gives us a chance to show who we are. It's what we do in those moments moments, what choices we make, what decisions that we make us. And so when you say, okay, now I've done the work, no, that's the beginning. Now you have to continue doing the work. We're constantly evolving. People just want a recipe for success, or they want to know, oh, okay, I've done it, I'm done. You're never done. I think about my business, I think about my life. I've been through so many phases of my life, of my business, of my journey, and it brings out different aspects of myself. And I have to keep asking myself, Lolly, who are you going to be in this moment? Are you going to live in your greatness or your gap? And those are decisions that you have to make on a constant basis.
Now, you talk about qualities of a great leader, and I'm just curious, of the qualities, are there any that you consider to be more foundational than others? Like, if this is missing, where it's a non-starter, or do you feel like they all kind of make up a recipe?
What a great question. And everybody wants that list. For 5 years, I wrote for Inc. magazine. And when I first started, I was writing articles that were in depth about leadership. And they said, no, Lolly, we want the 5 qualities and the 7 steps and the 12 this and the 3 this. And I was like, that's not how it works. And they said, that's what our readers want. And so for those that are looking for the 12 steps, the 5 steps, you have to understand that life doesn't come wrapped nicely in a box. Life is messy. And so the qualities that you need are the qualities that you are going to have to develop. So in my book, The Leadership Gap, I do talk about 7 qualities because I think it encompasses from one quality, and that is character. If you have character, you'll have integrity, you'll have trust, you'll have truth. So I believe character is the foundation of all qualities.
Yeah, and you really can't fake that, right? I mean, that you can fake it a little bit maybe, but it'll emerge pretty quickly, especially for the people that know you the best, the people that are the closest to you. I always think that one measure of a leader is how respected are they by their wife, their children, or their husband, the people that know them the absolute best. So I agree. I think character is so foundational. Do you have any tips on character development? I mean, we grow up in a culture that's not doing a lot of character development as a culture.
No, because we're so busy on wanting to arrive that we haven't dealt on what's going to get us there, right? And so I think character, like values, is a very individual journey. And I think about character, when I was growing up, the first thing I'll never forget, I think I was like 18 years old. And I asked myself a question like, who do you want to be, Lolly, in this world? And I knew that I wanted to make a difference. I'm a big servant leader. I care about people. Maybe, I care a lot. I lead with my full heart. And so that when I was 18, I'll never forget, I asked myself, if you want to serve, what does that mean? And I said, every time I encounter someone, I want them to feel better because they were in my presence. So to me, that was character. So the question that I have for each person that's listening today is, what does character mean to them? If they were to lead with character, what would happen to the person that they encounter? What would happen to the people in their lives? And how would it change? What do they need to develop in order to make that happen? And the thing about character, it has to be developed on a moment-to-moment basis. It's not something you can't go around and say, I lead with character, right? It's right. Like, what do you do in times of struggle? What do you do in times of stress? Like you just said, you ask those around you in your life, right? Your spouse. If you're not in the best space and you're not leading with character, it's going to come out very quickly. So the thing that's most important, the short answer is, look within, find out who you want to be, how you want to be perceived, and then develop those qualities that will give you character.
But there's a survey that came out, I think it was last year, and they surveyed something like 2,700 executives of major corporations all over the world. And they were mid-level executives that they were polling, and they were asking, what is the number one thing you want in someone you would follow? And it was character. Or in another way, it was consistency, was kind of that idea. So definitely the real world bears that out. So a couple of last things I want to ask. I mean, everybody's filled with fear and trepidation, and rightfully so. I think in this environment, people are seeing where the threats lie. But I also think there's probably lots of big opportunities, and especially for people who have looked for their chance to step into a leadership role. I think that this environment is creating a need for leaders. So if you were coaching, pretend my listener is sitting in front of you in one of your sessions, how would you coach them to, where do you see the opportunities right now, I guess is the best way to say that.
So that's a great question. So the thing about it now is that we have tremendous opportunity. Tremendous is because most people are feeling overwhelmed, challenged. And so the person that steps out and up is the person that's going to stand out, right? And that's leadership. That's the essence of leadership, right? The person that gets ahead of the crowd and says, come and follow me. The thing about it is that's most important is that in order to be that kind of leader, the question that I would ask is, how agile and flexible are you? Are you willing to do what needs to happen to change? Because if you say, no, I want my old life back, I want what was is not here anymore, and I don't think will ever be here again. What we need to learn is to be that agile and flexible person and say, where are the opportunities? And this is very important. Let's say we think there's an opportunity and we try it and it fails. Don't stop. Try something else. It's not, I did one thing and it didn't work. Keep looking. I always say, look at where the door is open. Look where the window is open and ajar, and step into it. So it could be something very small. And think about it this way. You don't have to change the world. Start with yourself, then start with those around you, then your community, then your society, then your business, then the world. So don't think it has to be the biggest thing. Little baby steps of being agile and flexible right now will get you to see the opportunities that are happening.
A lot of my listeners are leaders. They are leaders in small businesses, in education, in the faith community. And I'm just curious, you're one of the top coaches in the world. What would you say to them? Coach them a bit on coaching their people right now. What are some techniques they can apply right now in this environment to help their people get a lot of growth while we're sitting here all at home?
Right. If anybody has watched my TED Talk, I tell this wonderful story about Alexander the Great. They were in time of war. And the thing about it is that everybody was parched. Everybody was thirsty. And so the commanders saw that Alexander the Great was thirsty. So they ran to find a little stream to get him some water because he was their leader. When they brought him the water, he took the cup of water and he turned it upside down. And he said, if all of you don't have water, then I don't want water. So right now, what I would coach is the leaders that are leading others. Get into the foxhole with your people. Find out what they're suffering from, what their challenges are. Let them feel supported. Let them feel that you care. Let them feel loved by you, seen by you. When they feel that you're in it with them, they will do everything it takes to go the extra mile. I saw something on 60 Minutes last night that was so powerful, and it talks about true leadership. Is that GM and Ford, they're used to making cars. Now this coronavirus hit us bad, right? And what did they do? Within 3 weeks, they became agile, they became flexible, and they have a new business. They're making ventilators and they're making different machines and masks. That's who we need to be. If I can say to anybody as a leader, look at the opportunities like we talked about, get into what you can do to make a difference, and then go full throttle ahead.
I love it. Now, one question I ask every single person who comes on here is, and you clearly are a reader, if you had to only recommend one book to everybody to read, what would the book be?
It's a book that I have reread for the past 35 years, and I reread it every year on my birthday. And it's Viktor Frankl, The Man's Search for Meaning. And the reason why I reread the book every year is because I'm at a different stage in my life every year. And I find the essence of that book says to you that if you find yourself in a difficult situation, if you find yourself in something intolerable that you don't think you could make it to the other side, then find meaning in your struggle. And if you can find meaning in your struggle, you could make it through the most devastating struggles, challenges ever. And it's really been a profound book in my life, and I've given it as gifts to many, many people. The thing is that Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust. And the thing about that is that he found meaning. And when he was able to find meaning, he found purpose, and he was able to make it out alive. And so I recommend The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, I love that book as well. I mean, I think that we live in a really myopic time where, it's hyperbole society. Everything this is the worst it's ever been. It's the worst president. It's the worst government. It's the worst pandemic. It's the worst, and we can get a lot of perspective, whether it's biographies or whatever, that's not really true. So I think that book is a lot of, it's very apropos for what we're going through. And I think it speaks to something else, just as an aside, that you talk about a lot, which is this myth of perfection. Like if we get into a situation where things aren't perfect, well, that's the end. I mean, can you talk about that just real briefly?
Who can define perfect? I don't even know what perfect is. Every time one of my clients says it has to be perfect, I go, aren't we searching for excellence? We're not searching for perfect. We can change our verbiage around the word. I've never seen perfect. And so I think we're all searching for excellent. And when you search for excellence, then you become a better version of yourself and what you're trying to achieve.
Great. So Lolly, how do people connect with you deeper, follow you, get a hold of your book and that sort of thing?
So I think I'm everywhere on LinkedIn, on Twitter. LollyDaskal.com is my website. I write 3 to 4 times articles. I have thousands and thousands of articles on HBR, Psychology Today, and on Inc. And the thing about it is, like you reached out on LinkedIn and we connected. And the book that I've written that I'm very proud about, that I think can make a big difference, especially now in our climate of leadership, is called The Leadership Gap: What Gets Between You and Your Greatness. And you can purchase it in every bookstore and Amazon.
Yeah, and we'll definitely, guys, have links to all this stuff in the show notes. We'll connect to Lolly's social media, her YouTube, her TED Talk, her book, everything. So you can find all that stuff very, very quickly. Well, Lolly, it's been an absolute honor to meet with you and receive so much value from you. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
I want to say it was a real privilege, and what an honor it was to speak to you today.
Thank you so much.